This week on Jerusalem Dateline, ISIS claims responsibility for a major terror attack inside Lebanon, while Kurdish forces launch a bold campaign against ISIS to retake the strategic city of Sinjar. We also take you to the front lines with the Kurdish military. They're holding the line against the Islamic State. Plus, our cameraman takes to the skies for a bird's eye view of Israel. Hello and welcome to this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. The Islamic State claimed responsibility for a massive terror attack inside Lebanon. More than 40 people died in twin bombings that wounded more than 200. The attack took place in a Hezbollah neighborhood of the capital, Beirut. It's one more sign the Syrian civil war has already spilled over the Lebanese border. The Sunni Islamic State objects to the growing involvement of Shiite Iranian-supported Hezbollah inside Syria. Hezbollah is backing the Syrian regime of President Bashar Assad as ISIS is working to overthrow the Syrian dictator. The attack comes in the midst of a political crisis inside Lebanon. The country has operated without a president for nearly a year and a half, where the government has struggled to provide even basic services. One force fighting ISIS inside Syria are the Kurdish forces known as the Peshmerga. Thousands of Kurdish forces, with the help of U.S. airstrikes, are launching an attack on the strategic city of Sinjar in northern Iraq. The Islamic State captured the city in the summer of 2014 and forced thousands of ethnic Yazidis from their ancestral homes. Sinjar also sits on an important supply route for the Islamic State. The news is one more example that for more than a year, the Peshmerga is the one military force that has consistently stood up to ISIS. I went to the front lines for a rare look at the territory these fighters took back from ISIS. General Karzan of the Kurdish military took CBN News to the front lines. We crossed the fabled Euphrates River and passed the Mosul Dam. 1 year ago, ISIS captured the dam and threatened Iraq with an ecological catastrophe. Destroying the dam would have sent a 60-foot wall of water all the way to Baghdad, killing as many as 500,000 people. The Peshmerga took back the dam with the help of U.S. airstrikes. On the way, Karzan told us about ISIS.
They are like fire. They're not against a specific ethnic people or religion. They're against everything.
We passed villagers showing support for the military. Without the Peshmerga, their village would be overrun by ISIS.
They're very glad to live with the Kurds and under the control of the Kurds.
We go through several checkpoints in territory once contested by the Islamic State and the Peshmerga.
This is the most dangerous place for all of us and for ISIS. These places that you see weren't captured easily.
They take us up to their base, but caution us not to take any video inside. This is the front lines between ISIS and Peshmerga. ISIS fighters are just about 500 meters away from this position. And a lot of people say this is a key sector because it controls the Mosul Dam. But more than that, many people say this is the battle line, the fault line between the free world and ISIS.
These villages that you see belong to ISIS.
Karzan commands this forward base.
They believe that this is the line of the free world. This is why when ISIS comes to fight against the Peshmerga, they believe that they're crossing the border into Europe.
Soon after we arrive, ISIS fires 2 mortars toward another Kurdish position.
This is the only way they can show they're still active.
Back at regional headquarters, we spoke with Major General Bajat Arab.
Don't forget, the Peshmerga right now are fighting for the sake of the whole free world. If you wanted to take a look at the whole world, no one stands against ISIS. Look at what happened to the Iraqi army. No one fought ISIS, only the Peshmerga.
He painted a sobering picture of ISIS.
If the other people in the world want to know or see how dangerous ISIS is, let them come to Mosul, see what happened to the Yazidis and Christians.
He blamed the Baghdad government for the lack of advanced weapons they need to fight ISIS. He described a dismal picture of how they need to maintain their weapons.
Sometimes we have to repair one weapon with another. This is how we've used the old weapons to fight against ISIS.
Despite those old weapons, retired U.S. General Jay Garner says the Kurds are taking the battle to ISIS.
The only people that are successfully fighting ISIS is the Kurdish Peshmerga. You got a country here of 4.5, 5 million people that are totally pro-American, more so than we're pro-American. They're in one of the most strategic locations in the world, in the Middle East for us. To their east is our enemy Iran, to the south is our enemy Shia Iraq, to the west is our enemy Syria, and to the north is what we call a NATO ally, Turkey.
Garner says Kurdistan is a military man's dream.
You're at a perfect place where you could strike out of there, hit any of your enemies, plus you got support in the north with an ally.
General Arab added how grateful he was to the U.S.
We'd love to tell the American people that the Kurds are the only true friends they have in this area.
The Peshmerga say a decisive factor in the battle against ISIS has been U.S. airstrikes, but they say with more arms, ammunition, and heavy weapons, they can make even more advances against the Islamic State. Members of the U.S. Congress say it's time to get tough with ISIS. Republicans warn that the president hasn't taken strong action in Syria, leaving the door wide open for the Islamic radicals to launch their deadly attacks. Those warnings come as investigators say they're virtually certain that a terrorist bomb is what destroyed that Russian jetliner. Dale Hurd has the story.
Investigators are 90% sure the noise heard in the final seconds of a cockpit recording aboard the Russian plane that crashed in Egypt was an explosion caused by a bomb, according to a report from Reuters. 224 passengers and crew died. The Islamic State in the Sinai says it did it. Both parties in Congress say President Obama needs to step up attacks against ISIS. Republicans are blaming the president's strategy for allowing ISIS to spread death and destruction across the Middle East, and for allowing Russia and Iran to lead the fight.
The sad fact is, because we've had a failed policy and failed leadership, now we're having to rely on the Russians and the Iranians to go into Syria to fight and destroy ISIS. And that's kind of where we are today. And I think, again, it's this weakness invites aggression.
Congressman Peter King says the U.S. needs boots on the ground to fight ISIS.
This has to be an all-out effort. I don't think the president has done enough as far as having the forces on the ground that are necessary to make the air attacks more effective.
And Democrat Dianne Feinstein, vice chair of the Senate Select Committee on Intelligence, warns the U.S. cannot avoid a war with ISIS, telling NBC, "We will fight them now or we will fight them later." Feinstein says she's very worried about repeated attempts to bomb American passenger planes, and says the U.S. must do more than just the roughly 50 Special Forces members now operating in Syria. And if the president takes the advice from Democrats and Republicans, the United States could be sending more military to take on ISIS fighters. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Israeli Cabinet Minister Yuval Steinitz warned of a massive military buildup by Iran with the help of Russia and other countries. He raised Israeli concerns Russia will deliver to Iran the S-300 missile defense system. It's the most sophisticated of its kind in the world. Steinitz also warned of the growing Iranian influence inside Syria.
If Syria will become an extension of Iran, this means, at the end of the day, that we shall see a direct, strong and permanent Iranian naval presence in the Mediterranean, in the ports of Latakia and Tratus. This is dangerous to Israel, to the region, and I believe also to Europe and NATO.
That warning came as Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was fresh from a meeting with President Obama at the White House. The two men worked to mend some badly damaged fences after the president's nuclear deal with Iran, and talked about the need to ensure the security of Israel. It's a message Netanyahu took to both conservative and liberal groups. Jennifer Wishon brings us that story from the White House.
Thank you very much. With a handshake, President Obama and Prime Minister Netanyahu put their solidarity on display for Israel's enemies. The two men have always held vastly different worldviews, but their relationship has been particularly sour since the president feverishly pushed for a nuclear deal with Iran that the Prime Minister and others across the political spectrum in Israel adamantly opposed.
It's no secret that the Prime Minister and I have had a strong disagreement on this narrow issue, but we don't have a disagreement on the need to making sure that Iran does not get a nuclear weapon, and we don't have a disagreement about the importance of us blunting destabilizing activities that Iran may be taking place. And so we're going to be looking to make sure that we find common ground there.
The president tried to make it clear that he stands with Israel, but the Israeli people may not buy it. On the streets of Israel, many Israelis refer to the president by his middle name, Hussein, a reference to his Muslim heritage. Polling shows just 9% of Israelis believe this White House is pro-Israel. The president condemned recent Palestinian violence against innocent Israeli citizens. And while peace talks are on ice, Netanyahu says he remains committed to a peaceful two-state solution with the Palestinians.
I don't think that anyone should doubt Israel's determination to defend itself against terror and destruction. But neither should anyone doubt Israel's willingness to make peace with any of its neighbors that generally want to achieve peace with it.
International analysts say it's important for Israel's enemies to see the U.S. and Israel stand together.
There is a symbolic component that those enemies need to understand that there isn't any daylight between the United States and Israel as far as our alliance and our friendship. And that message has to be put out there very strongly.
While in Washington, Netanyahu is speaking to both conservative and progressive groups to make the case that the security of Israel isn't a partisan issue.
Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. It's the most Western-looking country for a lot of miles in that area. And we really need that relationship almost as much as Israel does.
Jennifer Wishon, CBN News, the White House.
Up next, European Union decision to label Israeli-made goods not made in Israel. Is it anti-Semitic? Israel and U.S. congressmen are strongly condemning a new European Union regulation. The regulation will label Israeli products made in disputed areas and say they're not made in Israel. Israeli officials and the congressmen say it's a political decision to delegitimize Israel, and it will hinder peace with the Palestinians.
The state of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was furious over the EU decision. He said it brought back dark memories.
Europe should be ashamed of itself. It took an immoral decision. Of the hundreds of territorial conflicts around the world, it chose to single out Israel and Israel alone, while it's fighting its back against the wall, against the wave of terror.
Products made in Israeli factories and businesses in areas disputed by Israel and the Palestinians will no longer say made in Israel. That includes products made in Judea and Samaria, the West Bank, the Golan Heights, and even here in the eastern part of Jerusalem, all areas promised to Israel in the Bible.
Ironically, those businesses often employ Palestinian workers and provide a much better income than they'd receive from Palestinian employers.
The European Union is not going to hurt the Israeli economy. It's strong enough to weather this. But it's the Palestinian workers in Israeli enterprises in Judea and Samaria that will be hurt. This will not advance peace. It will certainly not advance truth and justice. It's wrong.
Earlier, 36 U.S. senators signed a letter sent to EU Foreign Policy Chief Federica Mogherini. They expressed concern over the guidelines, saying they appeared to be intended to discourage Europeans from purchasing these products and promote a de facto boycott of Israel, a key ally and the only true democracy in the Middle East. We believe strongly that these efforts are unwarranted, dangerous, and damaging to the prospects of a negotiated solution to this conflict. Some Israelis went even further in their condemnation.
This is outraging because this is using double standards. You know, you can ask yourself, there are many territorial debates and regional debates in the world. And this special treatment of labeling products is kept only for the Jewish state.
The decision by the European Union to label Israeli products from Judea, Samaria, and the Golan Heights is an anti-Semitic decision. It just is.
The EU defended the decision, saying it was technical, not political. But EU Parliament member Roger Helmer said it's just plain wrong.
Boycotts of that sort are simply unacceptable. We wouldn't have any trade left at all if we wouldn't trade with people where we had some sort of problem or issue with them.
Helmer told CBN News that the labeling may actually benefit Israeli businesses.
There is a large Jewish community in many European countries and also others who might sympathize with the Israeli cause, who certainly won't be boycotting and indeed might be inclined to look for such products.
One Israeli businessman said it will be Europe's loss in the end.
And we should move ahead and develop new markets, open new markets towards the east, China, India, Asian nations, a much greater potential there for Israeli technology and knowledge transfer. And if Europe wants to isolate themselves from that movement, to their loss.
Up next, something you don't see every day. Israeli Jews and Arabs training to save lives side by side. With all the hatred in the Middle East, we found a hopeful story of Israeli Arabs and Jews training together to save lives. CBN Middle East correspondent Julie Stahl brings us the details.
This is a unique volunteer search and rescue team from the town of Abu Ghosh. Israeli Imad Jaber is a Muslim Arab who leads the group.
We rescue people. It doesn't matter gender, race, or religion. Our goal is to save human lives. It doesn't matter if it's a Jew or an Arab, American, Russian.
This is a home front command drill site. The search and rescue team is practicing saving lives from beneath a collapsed building.
But in the current environment, with Palestinians carrying out deadly attacks against Israeli Jews, rescuing people may not be their greatest challenge.
It's not simple and it's not easy, especially in these very difficult times. On one hand, we are Arabs, Muslims, and we're residents of the state, citizens of the state of Israel, that raise up a unit like this.
There are some 60 men in the unit, with another 42 waiting to join. It's an effort most Israeli Arabs wouldn't even attempt.
To raise up a unit like this takes courage. It needs people that are human. We're not fighting against anyone. We don't kill anyone. But the opposite, we are saving human lives.
Even as civilian volunteers, they are proud to wear these Israeli army uniforms.
We're wearing the uniforms of the IDF. That's an honor for us.
Abu Ghosh is about 6 miles from Jerusalem. It's known for fantastic restaurants that have a large Israeli Jewish clientele and a one-time world record for a nearly 9,000-pound plate of hummus. It's near biblical Kiryat Ye'arim, where the Ark of the Covenant once rested. In modern times, it's known as the only Israeli Arab town along the Jerusalem-Tel Aviv corridor that supported Israel in its war of independence.
This company of Israeli civilians from the Arab sector decided to be good citizens of the state, to be partners in all that happens here, to take responsibility for themselves in time of emergency.
Lieutenant Colonel Yigal Dahan is the Jewish Home Front Battalion commander who oversees this group.
I think they've taken a courageous step. Today, in principle, we talk about something scary, and here we find a shared cause that is saving lives. And together, it doesn't matter which race, which religion, which gender. I think it's a very important message in general for everything that's happening in this country.
Julie Stahl, CBN News, Home Front Command Training Center, Nes Ziona, Israel.
Coming up, skydiving in the Holy Land. Our cameraman, Jonathan Goff, takes a bold step 12,000 feet above Israel. Finally, we'd like to give you a bird's eye view of Israel this week. Our cameraman, Jonathan Goff, took a brave step right out of an airplane at 12,000 feet. Here's a look at skydiving over northern Israel.
jump was awesome. Free fall, wow. Air in your face, beautiful. God is good. Woo! Cheers, Mom. Yeah. Beautiful. Woo! Awesome. How was it? That was amazing.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah. Thank you. Awesome. Yeah. Wow. Let's do it again. Okay.
That was quite a ride for Jonathan. Well, that's all for this edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and now Periscope. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.